In 2014, a crack toy fixer was banished from the forums for talking about repairing vintage toys. Undeterred, this man promptly set up his own YouTube channel located in the Somerset Underground. Today, still wanted by hardcore Star Wars collectors, he survives as a maverick toy restorer. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find him, maybe toy-polloi can help you. Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and in today's video we're going to start repairing this vintage Tommy Gunn figure. Now, back when Action Man was first brought to the UK, there were a few other contenders to be the choice of boys' toys, and a company called Pedigree made their own version of Action Man called Tommy Gunn. This only lasted a couple of years before Palitoy's Action Man sort of won the market, and then later in the 70s that Tommy Gunn figure was re-released by a company called Zodiac toys, and that's what I have here. I have a Zodiac version of a Tommy Gunn toy. As you can see, he's in a little bit of a sorry state. He's fallen to pieces, and currently I don't have an outfit for him, and that's something I'm going to be sorting out while I get him put back together. Tommy Gunn figures are a little bit harder to find than Action Man because obviously they were only around for a few years, which means finding parts for them is a little bit harder to do. So I expect this project to take me a little while to get finished, but it doesn't matter. I want to get him started and I want to get this Tommy Gunn figure put back together. So let's get on with that. So here is the Tommy Gunn figure that I have. I actually bought this off eBay fairly recently. I paid, I think, about £50 for it. They're not particularly cheap, so I say even these later versions, this is the Zodiac Toys version, is pretty expensive. I think if you want to get a Pedigree version, the original ones, they are considerably more expensive. So for now I've grabbed myself this. As you can see, he has fallen apart. This is the same problem that we get with Action Man toys. The elastic and stuff inside perishes. He has a slightly different construction to Action Man, and I will show you that in a minute, but let's take a look at the figure to see what needs fixing up. The main parts of his chest is in pretty good condition. Actually, the elastic in there is still held in very firmly, so I'm not going to bother replacing that. You can see that it's held on the same way as Action Man, so we've got these sort of little metal hooks, and then that piece of elastic goes through the middle. The rest of this is not too bad condition at all. The hands have been chewed. That's very common with sort of Action Man as well. Kids would chew these, so yeah, I'm just going to have to leave those as is, as finding replacements I don't think is going to be possible. His head, again, it's not in too bad condition. There's no sort of scuff marks particularly. We've lost a lot of the paint on his head. That's fine, we can fix that, and it's a little bit dirty, so we give that a good clean. His legs, again, not too bad condition. Bit of dirt on them, so everything does need a good clean. There's a lot of dirt and marks on those, so we will clean those up. And likewise his pelvis, again, just a little bit of dirt from where the plastic rubs sort of on the inside, so we'll clean all of that up. But you can see he is a slightly different construction to Action Man. If I bring in an Action Man that I'm currently restoring, they do look quite similar, but when we get down to the pelvis, you can see on Action Man his chest has the sort of round part on it, which is the sort of the joint part, and when we come and look at Tommy Gunn, you can see the round part is on his pelvis. The leg construction is also slightly different. You can see on Action Man we have this added ball joint here on the hip, which really gives lots of mobility, and you can really move these legs around. The Tommy Gunn leg is slightly simplified. There's no ball joint on the top of the thigh there, so I'm guessing the motion on this is a little bit more limited, but you should still be able to pose him quite nicely. But I think Action Man certainly has these extra features which really make him a very poseable doll, and as we know, this is pretty much an exact copy of the G.I. Joe version that it was based on, whereas this Tommy Gunn, they seem to have sort of taken some artistic license. I suppose they were copying it as close as they could, but other areas are incredibly close to Action Man. And the reason I know this is a Zodiac Toys version of Tommy Gunn is if we turn it over on the back, you can see there's some copyright information. It says made in Hong Kong, exclusive for Zodiac Toys Limited. If you have a Pedigree version, that has no information on the back at all, so that's how you know you've got one of those. And as I say, this is the slightly easier version to find. I think the plastic used on the Zodiac Toys version is a little bit cheaper than the Pedigree version, so it tends to break a bit easier. But anyway, it's a good figure. It needs some work. I think the first thing I'm going to do definitely is give it a good clean, so a bit of hot soapy water and a toothbrush or a sponge, and we'll get all of this dirt and grime off, especially those bits on his head. Once that's all done, we can then restring him and get him back together, and then we'll start looking at the uniform. Okay, so after a good clean, he's looking a lot better. All of the marks that were on his chest have come off, especially these sort of rub marks around the joints as well. You can see there was sort of I guess it was sort of metallic residue around these joints. That has all come off, and yeah, it's just generally looking a whole lot cleaner. So now we need to restring him, and he's going to be much the same as a sort of restringing Action Man. I've got the elastic here, which is 4mm round elastic. I've got black this time. You can get any colour you want, because in the end you're not going to see it. It's all going to be inside. And to restring this guy, we're basically going to make a U shape of elastic. So we need a bit of elastic that we tie to this piece of metal here on one of the legs. That threads up through his pelvis, goes through the hook in his neck, and then comes back down, and we tie it to the other leg here. So we end up with a U of elastic. You could do it as a loop, but I think the problem if you do it as a loop, you'll end up with these legs splaying out. It's the same problem that happens with Mego dolls. They're done sort of much the same, and they have a problem that the legs tend to splay out. I think if we do it as a U shape, it will mean that the legs will end up straight. As I've never seen one of these before in pieces, I don't know how they were originally strung, but I think a U shape will be better. So what I'm going to do is tie the elastic onto this first hook, and then measure. I think we need about 12 centimeters of elastic before we get to the next knot. So you'll actually need to cut a little bit more than that, but a 12 centimeter length between the two knots I think is what we will need. So let's get this guy restrung, and then we can sort out the paint on his head. Right, so here's the elastic. I'm just going to hook that onto this hook. I have no idea what these little yellow bits of plastic are for. They were on a couple of the joints, so I'm just leaving them on there. It could be to protect the elastic, to stop it from rusting. It's missing on that one there, but on the head you can see there's the same sort of a bit of plastic there. Not sure what it is, but I might as well leave it. It makes no difference to how this works. So let's get this tied on. I'm just going to do a double knot here, tie it quite securely. I imagine originally they may have been a little metal bracket or something, a little metal clasp on the elastic, but a double knot will do. Yeah, that feels strong. That's not going to cause any issues. So now we can start threading this through. At this stage I'm only going to thread it through the pelvis, so we thread that through like that. And then, as I say, I think we need about 12 centimeters. I can measure it here on my board, so that is about 12 centimeters. So the knot needs to be here. So if I thread that through, sort of keeping hold of where I want it to be. Yeah, so I need the knot to be at that point. So again, I will tie this on here. I've got quite a lot of elastic, so if this goes wrong, if it's too short or too long, we can always redo it. But I think 12 centimeters should be about right. So let me tie that. Okay, I'm going to do a double knot. So what we've ended up there, as you see, is a U-shaped piece of elastic. This has gone through the pelvis, the rest of it we'll hook through in a minute. So I'm just going to cut off excess elastic there. And now we can start threading this properly. So that goes in there. Again, there's a little bit too much elastic on that leg. So yeah, those legs seem to be sitting quite well. Yeah, that's looking good. So now what I've got to do is thread this through the body and then hook the head on. To do that, I'm just going to use a piece of string. So I can thread that through the elastic like so. And then I can thread this through the body, and I'll use the string to pull the elastic through. It's just easier to do it with a bit of a string like this. So now that's through, I can pull this elastic through like that. Make sure everything is round the right way, which it is. And there you go, there's the elastic through at the top. I can get rid of the string and we can hook this on. Hopefully this will be the right length and it will all pull taut, which in this instance it isn't. You can see that elastic is too long, so 12 centimeters is too long. I will shorten that and we'll do that again, but you can see the process does work. It will do exactly what I'm hoping, but yeah, in that instance the elastic is too strong. As I say, this is the first time I've done this, so you make mistakes on the first one, but that's an easy thing to fix.
toy-polloi, that is incorrect. Try again.
Okay, so I've now shortened the elastic. It's about 3 centimeters shorter. You can see I've still pulled it through with the string. And all I'm going to do this time is take the head and I'm going to hook that hook onto the elastic while it's inside the body like that. And then I can let go of the string, or we can remove that. I'll just pull that out like so. And hopefully when I let go of this head now, it will ping in place. Yeah, there we go. That's good. And now the body is nice and tight and held together pretty firmly. And the legs are back on. Yeah, that's working very well. I think if I'd done it as a loop, these legs would end up being splayed out like that, because these are two separate bits of elastic, or essentially one bit of elastic, but with two ends tied at this bottom part. It means that these legs have a bit more freedom and they don't have that tendency to splay out. You can see that they are nice and level. So yeah, Tommy Gunn is now all back together. We can sort out the paint on his head. For painting his head, I think this is just black paint. It's hard to tell because there's a bit of a sort of orangey hue to it, which I think is just the plastic sort of coming through. It may be I need to add a little bit of brown or something to sort of tone it down, but we'll see when I put some paint on. So I'm going to be using a black Vallejo colour. This is 70.950. That will give a matte finish, but you can see that this has got a sort of semi-gloss satin finish to it. So once everything is dry, I will also apply a satin varnish to tone this all together. I don't think I'm going to repaint all of it. I just want to repaint the patches. We've also got to do his little eyebrows there, which are fairly sort of worn away, and for that I'm going to be using a pin. So this is a pin stuck in an old paintbrush handle. You've got a lot of control if you use one of these. You can just sort of dab a little bit on, and if you put too much on you can sort of scrape it away. So I'll be using that to paint these incredibly thin little eyebrows. But yeah, let's get some paint mixed up. I'm going to get some brown out as well, just because I think we need a little bit of brown in that. Looking at this under the bright lights here, it doesn't feel completely black. So yeah, I'll get a little bit of brown just in case I need that. But yeah, black, and that should do quite nicely. And there we go, that is the head all painted. It turns out we just needed black paint on that. The orange was just the plastic sort of leaking through a bit. So by the time I put the black on, I've now put the satin finish on the top. You can see that's looking really nice. We've got the same sort of sheen that the original one had. And as you can see, the eyebrows are back on. Using that little pin is a very good way of doing fine details like that. You can get them very neatly put on. And he's looking great. So let's get on and sort out his uniform. Now, just in time, this package has arrived. This is something I have picked up off eBay. I've been doing some research and asking some friends what the correct outfit should be for this Zodiac version of Tommy Gunn. And I was given quite a lot of advice. It turns out that I need to get an outfit that doesn't have sewn on pockets. The pockets need to be printed on. So a little bit of eBay searching, and I found this, which should be the top and the trousers, and also a helmet for Tommy Gunn, which will be enough to get him started. So let's open this up and see what is in here. Hopefully this is those pieces. It looked like they needed a little bit of cleaning and a little bit of repair work, so we'll have to get that done. But overall, it's a good start for getting his outfit put together. Right, yes, and this is exactly what I ordered. So we have here, we should have the helmet, which is a very specific helmet to Tommy Gunn. So yeah, that looks like the right one. Inside it, it says made in Hong Kong. So yeah, that is the correct helmet. You can see it's got a very unique shape, almost like a teardrop. So we need to give that a bit of a clean. It's got a little bit of a mark on it. And then we have the correct uniform for this Zodiac figure, which has, as you can see here, these pockets on the original version were sewn on. On this one, they are printed on. So all of the details are printed on. This doesn't actually look in too bad condition. There's a little bit of rust on some of the poppers there, but not too badly. And then we've got the trousers as well. Again, they have printed on pockets. Almost a perfect match on colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give these a quick wash and clean up, because they've probably been in someone's loft for a long time. So give them a wash, then we'll tidy up some of this rust on these poppers, and we can get that on the figure. But those are the basic bits that we need to get this uniform together. We get those sorted out, then we'll sort out his shoes and a gun. I first washed the outfit in hot soapy water, making sure to get as much dirt out as I could, then gave everything a good rinse before letting it dry for a short while, and then giving it a very gentle iron under a not very hot iron, just to try and take out some of the creases. After all of that was done, it ended up looking like this. I think the outfit is actually looking really rather nice. There's very little sort of damage or marks on it, a few little rust stains just around some of these poppers, but otherwise it's really looking very nice indeed. Now, if you've got poppers that are rusty, what you need to do is get one of these, which is a contact cleaner. It's an abrasive little brush. So this is made out of glass fibre, and you can use that to gently sort of scrape away the rust. You do need to be very careful with these because it is glass fibre, and if you get this in your skin, it's a real irritant, so make sure to wear gloves or something like that. But you can see it will clean up these buttons quite nicely. I've not bothered doing much work on these just because you can see they're fairly shiny, but this one here I've done a little bit of cleaning up and it's looking a lot better. I do need to cut away a few loose threads. You can see there are a few sort of threads hanging around sort of the edges, and nothing appears to have come apart on these outfits. There's no sort of seams that have come apart. These are just loose threads. So I've got a small pair of scissors here, and I'm going to quickly go around and cut off these threads just to tidy it up so that it looks a lot neater. And when we put this on the figure, it will make a big difference. If you have these sort of loose threads hanging around, it just makes the whole uniform look a bit messy. So we'll get these all sort of tidied up and cut off. We can put it on the figure, and then we'll move on to the shoes. Okay, and here we have the shoes, and I have to say a massive thank you to Alan, who very kindly sold these to me. I put a little request out to see if anyone had them, and he happened to have a pair. Now these are much like the Action Man shoes, the lace-up shoes, so they come with these very tiny little laces that go through holes. The plastic used on these is a lot harder than Action Man, so I was very careful threading this thread through. I used a needle and have very carefully sort of essentially sewn the laces on, and it took a few minutes to sort of work out how to do it best and which sort of way I wanted to actually get the laces threaded. But I've ended up with two boots now with the laces on, and as you can see, I've actually left the laces very loose because getting these on the figure is going to be quite hard. There's not a lot of flex to this plastic, and I don't want to split the back of them, so everything has to sort of go through the front. So I've left the laces very loose. I will tighten these up fully when they are on the figure, but as you can see, they do look pretty cool, and I think when they're on the Tommy Gunn figure, they look very nice indeed. need. But as well as those, we need some gaiters or putties, a little bit of elastic that goes around the ankle. Now I had a quick look on eBay and I saw someone selling some for Action Man, and they were wanting, I think it was like $3.99 a pair, but I thought that was a bit sort of expensive for what I wanted. So a quick search around, and it turns out you can just buy the same sort of elastic. So this is 2 centimeter wide flat green elastic in a sort of camo colour. I bought a metre of it, which costs slightly over £2, and from a metre I can make absolutely loads of these putties or gaiters. So that's what I've done. I've just made a couple. Essentially you fold a piece over and then sew down the back of it and then turn it the other way around. So if I turn this back to how I made it, you can see it is literally a piece of elastic and I've sewn down that edge there, and then turn it around the other way, and you have ended up with a gaiter or a putty, and these will fit really nicely on the figure. So I've made a couple of those. So let's get these shoes on. I'm going to be incredibly careful, as I say, putting them on, because I just don't want to split the plastic. There is definitely a left and a right, so I've got to make sure they're around the right way. I'll put the putties on first, then we'll get the shoes on and tie them up. And there we go, the shoes and putties are now on. It takes a little bit of time to get those on, just because the plastic on the shoes is very delicate and I don't want to damage it at all. And obviously tying up the laces at this size takes a little bit of practice. My hands are not quite small enough to do it, but I think I've managed to do it, and all of the sort of the bows are hidden in the putties anyway. If you want to do this on your own one, then the thread that I used is this stuff, which is just embroidery thread. This is made by a company called DMC number 310, and it's a fairly good match. It's nice and easy to use, and about the right sort of diameter to match the originals. And yeah, once you've got that all threaded through, which is a little bit tricky, they end up looking like this. The final thing we need for this project is his accessories. I obviously have his helmet, because that I picked up on the job lot on eBay, so I've given that a good clean, taken the marks off it. That can go straight on the figure. He also should come with a dog tag. Now I've looked at the dog tags, and to buy an original one, they're fairly hard to find, they're fairly expensive, but it's actually quite a simple looking tag. It's essentially a metal disc with a hole in it. It's got a little bit of text printed on the front. In fact, it just says gun with a T underneath it and a number on the back, and it's on a sort of a ball bearing looking chain, very similar to those of Action Man. So rather than trying to buy an original one, I just thought I'd make something that looks roughly similar to the original one. That turned out to be easier than I thought. On eBay, I found these metal discs that you can buy. They are sort of stamping discs or something. I guess they're supposed to be for, you know, making little tags of some sort. So I bought a whole load of those. The blue is just a protective layer. You can actually pick that off, and underneath it, it's just an aluminium disc. So I picked up a load of these. These are 15 millimeters across. I think that's about the right size. I've drilled a hole in it. I put it on a little chain, and there we go. That is what I've made. It took about 5 minutes to make it. It's not perfect, but when it's on the figure, it will look like it is a dog tag, and I think it will just give it that sort of final little finish that I'm looking for. So it should have some text on it. It may be I could take this down to a key cutter's place and they could engrave Gun T on it, but I really don't think it actually matters that much. The overall effect by the time that's on the figure will look really nice. So that's what I'm going with, a simple metal disc on a little sort of ball bearing chain. These chains you can pick up off eBay. I bought a whole load of them for making dog tags for Action Man. It's exactly the same chain. You sort of cut it to length, and yeah, that I'm very happy with. So that's going on the figure. I do also need a gun for him, and again, the guns are the Sterling guns, which is a gun that you get for Action Man. So what I've done is I've taken an old Sterling Action Man gun that I had. This was fairly beaten and broken up. The trigger guard was snapped off and missing, so I've spent a little bit of time just using some styrene sheet, some black styrene sheet, and cutting myself a new trigger guard and plastic welding that in place. It took about 5-10 minutes to make something that sort of fitted, and I'm pretty happy with the results. It does actually look like an original trigger guard now, so you can see that's not looking too bad. I've also put new elastic on this just to make it look complete. There's one big difference between these Action Man guns and the Tommy Gunn guns, and that is the magazine that goes in the side. The magazine on an Action Man gun is just a square block that sticks out the side. On Tommy Gunn, it is this curved thing. So again, what I've done, I spent about 10 or 15 minutes cutting a few different sheets of styrene sheet and sort of shaping it and cutting it and curving it. It turns out a 1.5mm thick styrene sheet will fit very nicely in the little magazine holder on the side of the gun. So I cut a piece of that, I've curved it. I've then stuck some other bits of styrene on top and bottom of it just to make it a bit thicker. So the end result is I've got a little piece of plastic that's about 2.5mm thick. It is curved, and it has a little tab on one end that will sit inside of the sort of magazine holder on the side of the Sterling gun, and this is what it looks like. So this is the end result. It's not too bad, it's not perfect, but you can see we've got a nice little curved magazine there, and it does unclip and that fits in. So this is not an exact match to the Tommy Gunn gun, but again, much like my little dog tag here, by the time it's on the figure, I think it will look really rather convincing. In future, maybe I will find myself an original version of this gun to go with the figure. But for now, this little modified Action Man gun is going to work very well. And here we go. Here is the finished figure, all dressed up with all of those accessories put in place. And as you can see, he really is looking rather lovely. I'm sure there are Tommy Gunn experts out there who will say that there are some things that are not quite right on him, but I think the overall effect that I've managed to get from sort of the remains of this figure and turning it into this, I'm very happy with indeed. Over time, it may be that I can find some more original pieces. It would be quite nice to get an original dog tag, and it would be quite nice to get an original gun, but at the moment, the pieces that I've made there look really nice, and he's certainly going to look very good when he's on display with the rest of my Action Man collection, which is where he's going to end up. Things like the putties and the gaiters at the bottom there, the pieces of elastic, finding original ones of those that haven't perished, it's going to be quite a hard job. So I think most people would be happy to have those as replacements. But certainly how he looks now, I'm really very impressed with him. It's a very nice looking figure and quite a unique looking figure. He looks so different to Action Man. I'm going to be very happy to have him standing with the rest of my collection just because he's so sort of unique. Action Men too tend to look all the same, so it's nice to have a slightly different looking figure in my collection. Obviously, as I say, this is a sort of a later release one. This is from Zodiac Toys. The Pedigree versions, the outfit is different. You've got the pockets that are actually sewn on, and I think he comes with a belt maybe, and there's a lot of accessories available for him as well. This later one was a very basic figure, so you didn't get an awful lot with him, but he's a nice looking figure and certainly comparable to Palitoy's Action Man. So I do have to say a massive thank you to Alan, who helped me out with a few bits for this project, and the guys on the Tommy Gunn Facebook group. They've helped me out with exactly what pieces I need, so a massive thanks to those guys. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.